So my next question, you partially already answered, but I have some more specifics to it. So the question, why use the cloud? I would want to make it a bit more specific, looking at, for instance, legacy applications. If you have an existing application, how does it benefit from the cloud?
Well, I think that a lot of things, and you'll see the popularity, especially at this conference, of things that have to do with scaling your applications and making things be able to deal with the fact that maybe you woke up and all of a sudden you have Facebook-like traffic. And this is a terrifying thing to you all of a sudden.
But Facebook is not a legacy app.
No, they're not. But as you're working, who knows, one day and it may not be legacy applications that benefit from this immediately as much as people doing sort of new things they're expecting to scale. I think that maybe if you're doing a back office, payroll system, that maybe putting it on the cloud today isn't the first thing you might want to do. But if you're providing a service for lots of companies to run their payroll through your system, and you might become successful, then instead of you having to find the 5 smart engineers out there in the world who can figure out how to really scale that, you can leverage a collective of those people who are already doing it. And then you can focus on making a payroll system for people, rather than focusing on engineering the scaling.
So can you move part of an application or onto the web? Can you use it just in part?
I think a lot of it so depends. By definition, legacy applications are the applications that were built for previous architecture and previous set of needs. And if they don't have the kind of scaling requirements, they're probably going to stay where they are. Fortunately, cloud computing is based on virtualization, so enterprise companies that are already going through server consolidation by virtualizing their infrastructure, they can start to envision legacy applications moving up the virtualization ramp, and then the next thing, now it's being provided by some other outside provider and now delivered over the internet. But by and large, I think legacy applications instead will be replaced by the new applications that are going to be solving the same problem, though, in a new way.
Yeah, we found at Amazon that there's this low-hanging a set of reasons why people are really interested in, I guess I'll call it forklifting an application into the cloud. And probably the biggest reason is that people just want to get out of that cycle of trying to find data center space if they're doing a colo, or arguing with the data center manager if it's in-house, and taking care of all of that infrastructure that's really not adding any value to their business. If they can get out of that cycle, they can pay attention to other things that are more pressing. But I think that in the recent months, what I've seen is we're seeing more and more enterprises moving into the cloud, is that what they're able to gain with the cloud is a level of durability and resilience, because in the cloud you're able to, for example, in the case of servers, select which of several data centers you want to scatter your servers across, and that may not have been an option in the traditional IT infrastructure where you only had a single data center. So it's that class of reasons that make it a very attractive value proposition for folks that are thinking about making a switch.
I'll actually argue that the legacy applications that you specifically asked about, I think, are easiest to move into the cloud, because one of the things we think a lot about in this crowd, I think, is scaling performance. And legacy applications, in my mind, are best understood. They've been around a while, people have been using them, they've been supporting them, they know what kind of hardware they're used to running them on. So you can pick from a list of servers, size up what you think it's going to run on, you're probably going to be right. And you have a good sense of what the demand is going to be. You compare that with something like Facebook, which is not a legacy application, and what are they going through right now? They're going through, crazy growth spurts, one after another. And that's a lot harder to scale when you've got many layers of abstraction between you and the hardware, and you don't know what else may be competing with you, what the infrastructure looks like. That's probably a big reason they own their own infrastructure and operate their own infrastructure, versus taking some in-house ERP system or accounting system and slapping on an EC2. I think the two are very different, and people should be a lot more comfortable taking something they understand and putting it on infrastructure that, for the most part, they're just picking from a list of things that look kind of like what they're used to, different classes of servers.
So Facebook has been very lucky in having this growth, but it is also at the same time very painful to go through this growth and scale. Cloud is the right approach, probably a dream, but it is not there yet. Slowly we will have applications which will be more and more like Facebook, and maybe even show even more growth than Facebook has. And these are the applications that the cloud can probably support. Even traditional applications, for example, if you take some things like QuickBooks or stuff from Intuit, could probably be moving to the cloud. And that is the direction I think in which the use of the cloud would be?
And so at a very different level, I operate machines, operate deployments, and for me, a big part, all of this I would agree, a big part is just flexibility in development and test. So when be able to have my DBA clone or set up another slave server with exactly the same hardware, same data as to production in order to test out schema changes ahead of time. So he actually knows how long they're going to take when we're going to be down in order to do an upgrade. And then pass this back and have a developer that's responsible for one of the migrations that takes longest and pass it back to him and have him fire up another clone of the production system for a day or two in order to actually optimize that change and bring it down to a reasonable amount of time. That's just flexibility that I didn't used to have, because I just didn't have a bunch of machines all with SAN ports and with additional SAN storage arrays just laying around for the odd day or the odd hour where we wanted to make a copy of the whole thing and try something out. So that's a very different level where I think the cloud is extremely powerful and really saves us a lot of time and a lot of headaches.
Yeah, and it allows you to do that even if you're, like you said, if you don't have lots of hardware running around, or you're working on something where you only occasionally need little bits of hardware. One of the developers at Canonical, one of the guys that works on the Bazaar version control system, just wrote a thing that when they're running their test suite, will spin up several EC2 instances, run the test suite in parallel, and then spin them all down.
Yep.
And if they do that once every couple of days, then they've paid like $1 for like 12 machines, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, we do that with our server templates. We have automated, it spins up a whole deployment with 10 servers, database, app servers, and put some load on it, runs some sanity checks, and shuts it all back down. It costs $1 or $2, and you have a whole complete test of the whole stack.
That's one of the words, I think, the real hallmarks, that we are actively driving down the cost of computing. And we're making it so affordable to do these experiments, to look at a lot of the processes that we run today and think about them very differently, because now the cost can be 10% of what it was before. And contrary, when we've seen that happen in the industry, the use of computing actually grows. I mean, it grows much faster than actually the cost reduction.
I like your growth, because it's, for me, I'm always hesitant when people think, oh, I'm going to save money. I don't know whether we're saving money. It's just we're using it as a tool, right? Being able to spin up the servers, use more servers in order to solve problems. And to me, that's more valuable than trying to say I'm going to squeeze the cost of it.
Of course, I think you've always talked about, having 1,000 computers running for 1 hour. The same cost, actually, for one computer running for 1,000 hours. So if you want to have something done right away, you have the time advantage of using the 1,000 computers. You can do that with cloud computing, and you can't do it in any other system right now.
There's also a real green advantage too, because you've got, if I, in a traditional infrastructure, wanted to have a lab with 20 test machines in it, then they're going to be sitting there consuming resources at times that I'm not using them. If I can put those back into the cloud so someone else can use them, that's even in a different organization, then we're able to share and have that be more efficient for the world in general, which is just really, so it's about saving the world.